Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is Grant Cameron. I want to thank you for taking valuable time from your life to listen. Thank you also to the Worldwide Metaphysical Tribe Conference for which this next hour is dedicated. The Worldwide Metaphysical Tribe is a vibrant and growing community of spiritual seekers, experiencers, and metaphysical practitioners who gather annually in Lost Nation, Illinois for a transformational event that blends cutting-edge metaphysical, personal growth, and cosmic exploration. It was founded by Deb Frew. The Worldwide Metaphysical Tribe began as a small gathering of like-minded individuals and has evolved into a major spiritual conference now entering its 12th year in 2025. The event is designed for practitioners in metaphysical material, alternate healers, UFO experiencers, contactees, and the metaphysically curious. Whether you're a seasoned practitioner or just beginning your journey, the tribe offers a space to connect, learn, and expand your consciousness. People say that it is impossible to get hit by lightning twice or to win a lottery twice, but that is exactly what's happened to me today. My guest is Kai Dickens, who is now world famous. We complain in the UFO paranormal world that we're not making much progress, but we are making a lot of progress. All you have to do is take a look at around the world. You can go around the world and say Area 51, and most people will say, "Yeah, I know all about that, Bob Lazar." You can say near-death experience, and people may not believe near-death experiences, but everybody knows what a near-death experience is, and they'll say, "Yeah, that's Raymond Moody, wrote the book in 1975." You can say anywhere around the world, Skinwalker Ranch, and people will say, "Yeah, I know what that is. That's History Channel. That's Brandon Fugel." And now since the last year, you can say telepathy, and everybody's going to go, "Yeah, listened to telepathy tapes. I know all about that." That's Kai Dickens, and Kai Dickens is my guest today. So I want to welcome her to join me for a second time. It's not, you weren't so famous the first time I talked to you, and now you're sort of all over. And that's why I guess my first question to you is, what does it feel like to suddenly have everybody knocking on your door and trying to talk to you and go from, and are you now a cool mom?
Um, I really have tried to just stay focused on the work. Like we're working on the documentary, we're working on the second season, we've been working on the talk tracks. So I think the greatest advantage is now I have a team that's really helpful who's able to kind of help with social media and help with, email and help with kind of the growing interest and questions and all of that we're getting. So I have really tried, and I've tried to not actually go engage in a lot of the speaking engagements and the that type of thing. I mean, I'm excited for those, and those are wonderful. But right now, I'm just laser focused on getting the great film out there, which it will be, which is going to be released early next spring, and getting season two to be as great as it will be. So I've stayed pretty insular, and therefore my life doesn't feel like it's changed too much.
You did have let me clarify. You had at one point, it was Christmas Day, right? You had the biggest
Yeah.
broadcast in the world. So talk a little bit about that. Did you ever expect something like that to happen?
No, I mean, not at all. I remember when I first actually talked to you, I thought, well, this is good. Like maybe a few people will listen to it. Like I felt as though it was my responsibility to get this project out there after we pitched it as a docuseries and got turned down every which way. And so I had no idea how to get it out there without any money. And the podcast, speaking into my own microphone, not needing someone to green light it, was my only option to try to get this story out there so that I feel like do my kind of like a soul contract that I felt like I had with the families and the teachers and the non-speakers and I had to accomplish that. And I think that's what the podcast was doing. So once it was out and published, I was like, okay, I did it. And I almost think because I let go of the outcome, because I stopped caring about what happened, just enjoying the work, like being in the flow of creating the work, feeling as though I did my best job that I could do, for the resources and abilities I had. I felt like, okay, I've done my part, and what happens now is what's going to happen. Um, so I thought it was powerful. I thought it was strong. I was proud of how it came out, but I was not expecting it to become what it became. and it's wonderful.
Well, yeah, I know, and I sent it to Bob Bigelow's
Mhm.
guy that runs his consciousness thing, and he said to me, I could tell it was starting to take off because wasn't even going anywhere. And then he said, "You're the fifth person in a couple days that sent me this video." And I go, "Oh, we're getting somewhere here." So the big podcast you overdid at one point was Joe Rogan, and you were on the Joe Rogan show. And I've always wondered, and maybe you can tell me, what's it like to go the day before? What do you do the day before? Do you go out for dinner with him? And how does a Joe Rogan thing take place in terms of doing an interview with him?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was flown in. They fly you in, and the day before I went to the hotel. I actually kind of prepped. I went back to the hotel and I thought about what was important to say. I talked to a lot of families, a lot of parents. I mean, I didn't go out with Joe that night. I was very focused on
Oh, okay. You didn't even go out. Okay.
no, I wanted to get in the zone, you know? And so, and then the next morning I went out to breakfast with my best friend from college, and she actually, she actually met randomly Joe Rogan's wife when they first moved to Texas because it was during COVID, and their kids were in the same class, and she didn't even know it was Joe Rogan's family, but invited this new girl to her house to play, and I thought that was kind of sweet. Um, so, but anyway, I don't think they've kept in touch. So anyway, I had breakfast with my friend from college, and then they pick you up in a car and they take you to the studio, which is really far away from everything. They try to keep it really hidden and secret, kind of where it is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun movie props and things like that in there. There's, werewolves from different movies and, cool alien props and cool, just a lot of, there's a huge, taxidermied crocodile. I mean, there's all sorts of really cool things in there. Pretty dark studio, it feels very dark and masculine and, that type of thing. I think he has a gym in there because when he came out, he was really like amped and sweaty and had a change and shower. And, um, and they have really amazing toilets in the bathrooms. That was the thing where I was like, wow, he had those Japanese toilets that are like $3,000 each, where every single thing
Well,
has a different music and song and colors. And I was like, wow, this is really intense. So it was fun. I mean, it was a few hours, and I think we had a nice discussion and reached a different audience. So it felt
yeah.
important to do.
So the audience we're doing today is the Metaphysical Tribe. Now, this is a bunch of mostly women, which you'll find in the paranormal world and the spiritual stuff. It's not very masculine. It's very sort of feminine, and a lot of these women do paranormal stuff, tarot card reading, psychics, mediums, all this kind of stuff for a living. So
Mm.
they're struggling, and that's why they meet every year is to get together to support each other and to try to learn from each other. How do we get this thing going? How,
Yeah.
how do we make our business bigger? And based upon your experience, what can you say to them in terms of struggle and your journey in terms of what they're trying to do the same sort of thing?
Yeah, well, I have a few things to say. I mean, first and foremost, I wish I could be there with everyone. It was my intention to be there, but we're in the midst of filming right now. So next week I'm heading to Chicago, so I'll be in the same state. But we're doing all the telepathy test, testing in a clinic in the northern suburbs. So I wish I'd be there, and I hope I could be there with everyone next year. Um, and I think, and we talk about this a little bit in season 2 because we have an episode on mediumship. And what I really hope is that what happens to kind of the metaphysical tribe is that season 2 kind of helps validate and strengthen and amplify people looking for resources around whether it's energy healing or mediumship or divination. We're going to really look into all that stuff with a scientific discerning eye that also embodies wonderment and experience. Um, and I think it's tricky work. It's been tricky. And we talk about this in season 2 as well, that for a long time, if a man of the church is doing this stuff, it's considered holy. And if a common woman is, it's considered heresy. And, you get, damned as a witch or worse. And so it's been a really rough road. And I think there's a lot of, suspicion and doubt around a lot of the skills that are very real. And I think thankfully the world I think is opening up in major ways to the just the reality of energy and the unseen, forces at play, energy at play. And for the metaphysical tribe and for individuals who are really trying to make a living or try to help or serve people with those crafts and those gifts, I think this is the best time and it's going to continue to be the best time, maybe in history. Um, And I really encourage anyone to try to get certified as a spelling communication regulation partner, a CRP, to work with non-speakers. I think, I've seen over and over again, folks have their talents and gifts either turned on or amplified in doing that in unbelievable ways. I was recently just talking to a mom, and she's got a daughter who's really good at, energy. She's kind of like a medical medium. She's a non-speaker, but she was having issues. So the mom took her to go see like the best, kind of like energy medical worker in Florida. And like fast forward 2 months now, he's kind of working with her and using her as a help. And it's like a really mutually beneficial situation. So, yeah, I mean, I think that now more than ever is the time to lean in. And if people are able financially and time wise to get certified as a CRP and start working with non-speakers, I feel like their life would change forever, as well as their career.
Yeah. You have been working at this for a couple of years.
Hmm.
Uh, and in the basic time, have you seen a change in terms of attitudes towards paranormal stuff? I mean, I think you had a lot to do with it, where yours thing shifted, and then the suddenly the blindfold reading thing took off, which
Yeah.
we've been struggling for that with for 10 years.
Yeah.
So do you see this like you mentioned, this is a time where this may be our time in the sun for people who are working on this?
Yeah. And we're going to hammer it. I mean, we're kind of trying to do a triple punch, right? So the first season was like telepathy is real. These are the most earnest messengers of this truth, right? Like through non-speakers with autism who have no skin in the game, right? They most unfortunately at this point most can't make money or have a career or like become, the
Yeah.
popular kid in school with the best social media channel. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So I think through that the world was kind of opened up to that, but there was like a counter goal I had through that first season, which was to help people realize we live in a materialist paradigm. That paradigm is controlled by scientists and academics in higher institutions of the ivory tower. Sometimes it's unintentional, but there is this whole idea of like, oh, if you don't believe this paradigm fully, then you're silly, you're gullible, you're not educated, you're not smart, you're not discerning, and that can be more far from true. And to really look at how, though many parts of materialism are correct, whether it's biology and psychology and physics, math, the idea of where consciousness comes from, I think, is completely wrong in our current model of materialism, right? Consciousness is at the top of the pyramid. Kind of post-materialist scientists and people who are very much looking at the invisible, not just the visible world, are saying, hey, consciousness is fundamental. It's the base of the pyramid. And once you understand it's the base of the pyramid, then things like telepathy, clairvoyance, remote viewing, precognition, mediumship all become very obviously clear because it's the realization that our mind has created everything here. And maybe someone else's mind created the earth, right?
Yeah.
Its
Yeah.
creation is the basis of everything. So, so I think that is changed remarkably. So I would say that's probably the most satisfying impact of the telepathy tapes. Maybe not the most, but one of the most is the fact that people are realizing it's okay to talk about this stuff. It doesn't mean you're gullible and not educated. It means you're just as curious and discerning as anyone else. You're asking really big, important questions. But we're going to hammer that even further in season two. We are looking into mediumship and plant communication and psychedelics and kind of the origins of consciousness and animal communication and energy healing and all of this stuff. And then we end on an episode talking about how scientists and people have been shackled by, materialist science journals and media who shame them and ridicule them and dismiss them if they dare ask these questions and put something out there, or they can't even get it out there if the data is even accurate and peer reviewed because it's kind of controlled. And then in the film, of course, we kind of hammer that idea even further. So my hope is by end of next year, it's going to be a brand new day as far as how people are really starting to treat these questions and those who have these gifts that I think are very natural.
Wow. Yeah, you've done a lot. I think if it comes down to missions and we're all on missions and stuff, I
Hmm.
think yours is one of the important roles because you're sort of like a broadcaster where people are watching YouTube and they're watching documentaries and stuff like that. I was just talking this morning to Anthony Shen from Productions who does near-death experience stuff
Mm.
and heavily edited, just beautiful production work and stuff like that. And I was talking to him about his journey, and he said, "Why does it have to be so hard?" I'm so
Mm.
lonely. And this
Oh,
idea where, he's in France, he's working on this stuff, and he knows he's doing important work. He's getting messages, he's getting stuff. But it's this idea that we had to struggle. But I guess maybe that's part of the whole issue, that you have to struggle. You can't just be given to you. But it does seem to
yeah.
be that people like you and him, who are doing the sort of the visual stuff that people like to watch, and you subconsciously are getting messages across where people aren't. So like, if you come to someone and say, I want to tell you about telepathy, they just go like, take 7 steps back, get out of here. You're like, leave me
Yeah.
alone. But
Yeah.
yours is an indirect way where they're not offended by watching the thing, and they don't realize that they're actually getting ideas across to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's correct. But of course, I mean, anything worthwhile is always a struggle, right?
Yeah.
It takes
Yeah.
a lot of work, it takes a lot of time, a lot of discipline. I think it's very hard to do anything meaningful without a lot of hard work and sacrifice and often a lot of pushback. So, I
So
mean,
these practitioners at Metaphysical Tribe can rest easy that things will work out if you just keep working at it. And so let me ask you about, in terms of your movement to get things done. There's always this talk about the documentary. So the documentary is fully funded, it's ready to go, and it's coming out. Tell me a little bit about
yeah.
the documentary and the struggle that you got to get there. Because I remember last time it was like you're trying to raise money and you're trying to get this thing going, and if anybody can help. And so tell me about that journey.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, after the podcast came out, we were able to get, donors and funders and investors and stuff to kind of come together to help us get our documentary budget. And we've been filming nonstop really since January. Our first week of filming is next week.
Oh, okay.
And I will be gone through mostly the end of August, getting the final telepathy test in the can, and then some pickup shots, and then we're done. So we've been editing a lot, and we plan to be picture locked, which means no more changes can be made on January 15th. So um, we're just going to take the final footage that we get here, finish editing. We're working with a really cool graphics house called Mindbomb. We've got 5 non-speaking advisors helping us with story and graphics and the look of stuff. So it's cool. It's going to be great. Ani DeFranco is doing the score, which is cool. And yeah, it should be ready to roll. I think probably released next March. I mean, our goal is to maybe try to get into South by Southwest. Would probably be the first big festival that we can hit given our timeline.
Wow. And you've got, that's the non-speakers, is what's the documentary, mostly the non-speaker stuff?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's basically based on Susan 1, you know.
Okay. Yeah, the stuff that really made the
Hmm.
headlines.
Yeah.
And I've been doing a number of interviews with Dahlia, who you probably know, and now
Hmm.
she's known as the Dalai Lama. And is she her daughter? You're working with her daughter?
I'm not working with Dahlia. Been working with Dr. Powell. So
Oh, yeah.
there's kind of like a few different groups of telepathy tests going on and experiments. And I mean, there's so many non-speakers in the world that are excited to participate in research that will kind of further, this exploration. So I know Dahlia, and there's other select few that have really been working with Dr. Powell. She's been working with both the University of Virginia and Stanford.
Yeah.
And then I'll be talking to Dr. Powell next week because she's going to get a report on what's happening in Chicago. I thought it was really important, as well as the scientific community, to find independent neuroscientists to work with kids that no one's worked with, to try to duplicate and test telepathy in the most airtight conditions, which is what Reddit definitely needs, the world needs. Dr. Julia Mossbridge, who's a neuroscientist who's really studied a lot of precognition stuff in the past, she's brilliant. She got an IRB approval and research funded to work with a team of researchers to work with about like 12 different non-speakers in a clinic in Chicago. I actually just had a meeting with that team this morning. They have been doing a lot of trials. They having a triple blind computer, having like a computer send a thing to a room where a non-speaker or a different sender is. They see it, no one else knows what they're seeing. And then that person has to telepathically send it to another room where someone, spells it out. and they've been able to do this now over and over and over again. So it's done. I mean, the gold standard is completed. Now we just have to get it on camera. So it's exciting.
Wow. So
Hmm.
there's a number of different scientists and people working on this, whereas before there was you couldn't buy someone to do
Yeah, yeah. I
it.
mean, it was Dr. Powell against the world, and what's been
Yeah.
great is like, she's gotten funding and she's working on some stuff, and that was, was awesome because in the film I was like, this is great because then we can have independent scientists kind of replicate what she has been showing or what I've found out talking to people, and that's really important, as you know, for science and just for critics and all that skepticism.
Have you got any of the skeptics that are going to be sort of looking at the tests you're doing, or who set up the testing
Yeah,
protocol?
I'm not doing anything with it. The protocols were all designed by Dr. Julia Mossbridge, Dr. Jeff Tarrant. They have a few other researchers. We had a science roundtable in Los Angeles where we had people from UCSD and Yale. So there have been a lot of different conversations around the science and how to do the best protocols. And what I've told the scientists is I can't have any part in it. I can just film it because I want to make sure that it's so clean, so clear. There's no agenda. I can't pay for it. There's nothing I can do. Like is I have to be hands off and just pay to go film it, you know. So that's been awesome. And yeah, they've set up protocols that worked. And I know that they've actually talked to some non-speakers around what would work. Was it better to do number cues um, or random pictures or random words? And one of the things that came out of that is to show a random video. So I think they have like hundreds of videos in this computer system. Again, the sender, the person controlling the study, has no idea what video is going to pop up for the sender, who's going to send telepathically.
Wow.
Um, but I know, for example, one of the first they did was with Coco, the gorilla who could speak sign language. And the non-speaker that was in another room, like across the building, wherever they were, started spelling out, there's a friendship between, a primate who's hairy and a human being, and they're communicating. And an AI system then will evaluate whether what that person said matches the right video. And then if it's a match, it counts as a match. So it's really tightly controlled, and that's really important.
Wow. Uh, uh, um, I lost my question. Yeah, how many emails do you get? Like when at the peak, what were you dealing with in terms of people? And did you get any real significant leads in terms of people that you'd never heard of?
Yeah, I mean, it's been wild. I mean, there's so many emails coming in, and now, we have a staff to help with that. Like, but I can't even open my DMs in my Instagram or Facebook because there's so many, and I can't respond to them because if I did all that, then I wouldn't be working on the second season and the film. And so there's help, and I will eventually start to respond to all those, and I am responding to as many as I can. And then what we started too was something called like a supercast, which is like a membership, so you can listen for I think $6 to all the podcasts without ads. And then there's an Ask Me Anything board, and I do write back to those, so people can ask me anything, and I write back. I try to do that once a week. And then there's also a private Discord page, which is like a Facebook group. So there's a lot of families and empaths and parents and non-speakers and energy healers and metaphysics and all sorts of that, like all of it's on that. So our supercast page has been really valuable. But, I mean, it's just weird. Like, yeah, there's tons of celebrities reaching out that want to get in touch with D.T. Young, who's the animal communicator we featured in the talk tracks, or um, it's been very weird. I've talked to a lot of celebrities about who want to make a scripted version of the telepathy tapes. Um, but again, like I'm just so focused on the work. I'm not looking for my life to change or anything like that. I just want to make a difference with the work.
Wow. It's so you're doing season two. Talk a little bit about season two. Have you got some interesting stuff coming up, and what do you do, 12 episodes or 10 episodes? And
Yeah, so we're doing 10 episodes. They drop on October 15th. And, I think for the group that will be gathering in Illinois, I think some of the most interesting stories are, we've incorporated a few different non-speakers who weren't featured in season one of the telepathy tapes. If you haven't listened to the telepathy tapes, I recommend it. This first season really brings you on a journey in order of kind of the mounting mystery and investigation, and in both a like a very beautiful and a storytelling way, or sciency way, I guess I should say. But there's been some wonderful non-speakers that came into our path that are going to be in the film, but also in season two. One young woman is extraordinarily fascinating. Her name is Nina, and her sister discovered that she was in there when her sister, who's neurotypical, had to leave her kind of like, blossoming career because she came down with an horrible like autoimmune disease. And
Wow.
she went home. She was really sick. She couldn't leave the bed. Well, while she was kind of homebound and her life was kind of derailed, she thought, well, I should just try to start learning to communicate with my sister and try to teach her the spelling method where you point to letters since you can't talk. And pretty quickly, her sister, once she gets open on the boards and starts communicating, she started telling her sister herbal cures for herself. And I think the first thing she recommended was astragalus, which is this Chinese herb that boosts the immune system. And her sister Natalia started taking this, and her immune system started to get better. And then it became a beautiful journey for this family because they learned that Nina, who again, like had just been freed from her silent prison by learning to communicate via spelling, on a letterboard, was able to diagnose pretty much anyone that came across her path. She'd look at someone and say, like, you need to get your heart checked. And the next day they
Wow.
would. And they're, hours from having a heart attack. And I remember hopping on the phone with her sister one day and she said, "Oh, Nina has a message for you." And she told me a certain balm to put on my knee because I was having a knee problem. And it was something I'd never heard of. And so I spent some time asking Nina, so as well as her family, and how can you do this? And it was beautiful. She said that she can communicate with plants, and she's like, I can download any of their properties. And I was like, well, how? Like, I'm trying to figure out, is it like the plant is a receiver of some sort of informational field? Like if you're near that plant, you know, this one is good at healing a headache or, um, and the way she described it was so beautiful. She said, the messages feel like smoke all around me, but I'm able to determine who lit the fire. Is how she said it. So it's like
Wow.
she like the messages of all the plant or this informational field of plant medicine or whatever. She sees it as like in this field all around her, but she's able to like kind of follow the string to which plant can do what. So she said they don't have to be near me for me to know, but that she feels deeply compassionate with the plants and understanding what they do. Um, so that was beautiful, and the way she talks about, I think trees and plant life is also very beautiful because she kind of talks about this whole unconditional being, right? Providing us oxygen and food and shelter and shade and and medicine, and aren't angry at us for destroying their national their natural habitat or
Yeah.
hurting the air and causing fires. There's just this unbelievable compassion and love for us and a kind of selflessness. So that's been a really beautiful thing and something we're exploring in season two. What can we
Sorry. Sorry.
That's okay. So that will be a big thing in season two is like, do you need a brain for consciousness to experience the world? Um, and I think we're also doing an episode on seeing without eyes, right? Like with the blindfold schools and stuff, because it's kind of the same question, right? Like, do you need eyes to see? Eyes are part of your brain. I mean, you see with your brain more than anything else, right? Your eyes are part of your brain. Um,
So tell
and
me
I,
about that episode because we just did a few interviews on and
yeah.
who have you got doing the blindfold?
Yeah, so we've gotten a few people. So I went to England to spend some time with Nicola Farmer,
Oh yeah,
and
I
yeah, so
interviewed her.
I went to her school and met a lot of the kids and some of the parents and other clinicians, and I had the crews trying on the blindfold. I was trying on the blindfold, and it's like one of the hardest things to believe because it feels so physical and so, but there's no way to explain it, and even some of these individual kids, like they're looking one way, but their out of body eyes, the ones that can see when they're blindfolded, aren't necessarily facing the same way. And Nicola was saying we want the kids to integrate and kind of have that field, but that's not always true. So, like one of these little boys had the blindfold on, and we looked at it, we tested, there's nothing getting through, and we were like over by the side of his head, being like 2, 4, 5, and he could just easily say it. And then we went and met with a few individuals from the intuition process, and saw that work. That was unbelievable. Like one of the girls, they taped her eyes shut and then they put on the mask. And we were doing things like we would draw a picture. And then while we were drawing it, she'd be drawing it. So in a way, it's almost like remote viewing, and that's the thing. I was like, "Oh, what are they seeing with? Is it like a soul? Is it light and they're getting light from other places on their body? Or is it like remote viewing?" Um, and that was phenomenal too, because at one point I kept trying to change it up. Like I would start writing in one color and then start doing it in another color. And then maybe I'd make a shape and it's like, a heart is set instead of an O, like all sorts of stuff just to be like, how, so if someone was like in their ear, which there's not, we check and stuff to make sure there's no bugs in there. And we did check the ears, but let's say someone was somehow they're able to do it. Like it's really hard if you're going to say, oh, it's the word is cool, but to be like, make sure the cool has a purple O and a heart for an O, So
Yeah.
we were making it really tricky and they got everything, everything. It was unbelievable. So I think I'm very convinced it works and it's happening. And then another person in that episode was a woman who's also like an investor in the film, and I think she was trying to validate and understand like how true a lot of the stuff was. And we said, "We'll go look into this," and she wanted to go look into it. And now her kid is completely seeing blindfolded. She's able to teach other people. So I think once anyone kind of starts to explore this, it's really real.
Yeah.
But the explanations for why I don't think are the same across each group doing it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I've learned in this space is that, I talked to Dean Radin for the Telepathy Tapes film, and he's like, the data around telepathy, around remote viewing, all of it's there. It's evidential. It's pretty clear at this point. It's been repeated. The metadata is there. It's all points to it, but we don't have a solution. We don't have the answer for why. And that's what freaks out skeptics is unless you know why,
Yeah. But
it's
they're still
hard.
in that material world. They're still looking for a physical explanation for
Yeah.
this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We had this Dahlia girl. She did the last demonstration she did for me. She had four blindfolds on. And I
Hmm.
remember I was using my grandson's cards to, because she would never have seen those cards before, because he's 1.5 years old. And I'm showing, so I showed her mother this, and they were just sitting there watching. My son was watching it, and it's like, whoa, that's pretty cool. And then she goes, maybe she's peeking. It's like, come on. It's sort of like when you go to that world. So you've got a
Yeah.
big job. Are these kids still 100% 100%? Because Dahlia, I've done her 3 times, and she just bang, bang, bang as fast as you can post the card.
Yeah.
She's picking it up. Is it still 100%? Because that's the difference between maybe Dean Radin's material, where he's
Oh,
got
for
like
sure.
32% and it's 25 is chance. Therefore, there's a
Yeah.
statistical. This is like 100%. I mean, are they still
Yeah.
hitting
I
targets like
mean,
that?
it's interesting because I got in big trouble by some scientists and stuff by saying 100%, not because it's not true, but just because their fear of it makes it so much less believable when you say that.
Yeah,
And, and what I have found is that I mean, what Dean Radin was, right? Like if it'd be four options for a card, let's say,
yeah,
or for a cue, people were getting above 25%. They were
yeah,
getting like 30, 35.
yeah,
And that was a big deal. That's statistically relevant. It proves the
yeah,
thing. But
yeah,
yes, like I would say that in any telepathy test that I've witnessed, it's well above 95%. And
yeah,
and I think often if there is a mistake, it's because of their body, right? And these non-speakers, many of them have apraxia, or there's a distraction, or there's tons of people in the room, or there's a mispoke when they're spelling. Um, but I'm also learning, like now that there's other scientists doing this, that there are things that make the telepathy stronger. And I don't know why that is, but it seems to be true. Like if you are in the room, it's way stronger, like the telepathic pair. But that's like only when we're testing it because um, I don't know if that's true for some people, not true for others, because we have also tested people remotely through this like computer system. And Jeff Tarrant has a parent here and someone else here and someone here, and the individuals have been able to do it. So it just depends. And then some non-speakers, like just the ability to control their body is everything. So having someone in the room who can help ground their presence or to help even just like if they need a little bit of touch in the beginning just to like keep them calm, like that might help them go faster and quicker. But for these telepathy tests that we're doing in Chicago, we're making sure that everything is separate. So but yes, the non-speakers are extraordinarily excellent at this compared to a general population.
yeah. That's another big problem you've got being the forerunner of this thing is you got to figure out all the tests. You got to figure out what to
Hmm.
do and how does this thing work and stuff. One of the things I talked to you about before, and I found out it's like the idea that it's all the same thing, is with the blindfold. There's the one woman in India. I'm trying to get an interview with her, but She's doing blind people, same as Rob Freeman's doing blind people that don't have no eyes. Forget about being blind, they
Yeah.
have no eyes. And she brought up the fact she's talking about her kids, and suddenly she started talking about kids speaking other languages with the blind
Yeah.
folks. And you mentioned that as well. Have you got any efforts to test this because that's something that would just blow people away as well. Because I know
Yeah.
Dahlia's daughter, I asked her, and she said yes, her daughter started writing in Russian. She had to go
Yeah.
and figure it out. She tried to show this language to people, and someone said, "Oh, that's Russian." And then she started getting these translators and started doing these little tests. But that kind of stuff is just mind-blowing in terms of
Yeah.
you get it first in the non-verbal, and then suddenly I see it in the blindfold people. This they're reporting the same stories.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a really, really weird amount of overlap. Like when you start working on those, doing the blindfold work, it seems like it opens up or unlocks like maybe some part of the same brain or the antenna or whatever it is, that's connecting to the stuff. But the thing that was fun is like after we had an episode or two about that in the celebrity tapes, the amount of parents reaching out saying the same is true for me. My child actually knows this, or my child knows this, and I thought, well, you didn't tell me. And they're like, well, you didn't ask. So I
Yeah,
think it's pretty
exactly.
widespread in a really exciting way. And the way it has been explained to me now multiple times is that language is just sounds we put to a meaning, right? The meaning
Yeah.
is the same throughout. So for a lot of non-speakers, what I've heard too is like they can understand almost any language because they understand the meaning behind it. Like there is this energetic imprint on words, which is so cool to think about. Um,
So that's your theory. I mean, you asked that we should talk about science. So let's talk about the science of this thing. Like how's your worldview changed in terms of what you think is going on from when you started? Because
mhm.
you've gotten a lot of theories, and does anything make sense to you in terms of what's going on? How does reality actually work?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I think I can say that I don't have to speculate on that I think is completely true is that consciousness is fundamental. I think that is the base. It comes before everything else. And even for the most science-minded person, that should make sense, right? Because if you look at the entire world, everything started off as a thought. Like the books behind you started off as a thought. The shelves behind you started off as a thought. The house that you're wearing started off as a thought. The clothes. The only thing that didn't start off as a thought is the actual universe, like the world, right? The grass and stuff that were the rocks and the life that has sprung up here. But who's to say that wasn't someone else's thought? So, um, so I do think consciousness is fully fundamental, and I do believe consciousness extends beyond our bodies and making telepathy, remote viewing, survival after physical death possible. Those all seem pretty concrete now, and I would say just from so much research, so many conversations, but also like we talk about this in season two, the testing that they've done around mediumship, around near-death experiences, it's pretty evidential.
Yeah. Um, in terms of this whole thing with the metaphysical tribe, they just ran again. You can see this thing is starting to pick up the Psy Games. Were you at the Psy Games where
I wasn't
apparently,
there this year. I was filming in Wisconsin,
yeah, they
unfortunately,
said,
with
I think it's
with
the first
Laurel and
one.
Jackson, though.
That's the first one they had, and they sold out all the tickets.
Yeah,
Then
it's cool.
Dahlia came up and she got a standing ovation. People were screaming and yelling, and when they saw what she was doing, and then she brings her daughter up with the telepathy thing and starts in the telepathy thing, and they're just like people are just blown away. And they're doing a training session actually right now in Mount Shasta, and like 7 people said, "Oh, I gotta come. Can I still get in?" And it's sort of like this thing is all taking place. So it's this crossover that you see with all these phenomena. And I think with you, didn't you say that you have more than just the side thing that you've got experiences going on as well in terms of your own personal life, in terms of dreams and stuff like this, where you can see this crossovers where because that's what you see in these paranormal phenomena when people get into them. It's like you fall down the rabbit hole and suddenly you start attracting. It's like a magnet. All this other phenomena starts happening, synchronicities, and you're starting to wonder like whether you're going crazy or what's really going on.
Yes, I know that that is a reality, and I that hasn't really been happening to me, but I think I don't know why. I don't know if there's like a bubble around me so that I can just be focused on this like story and stuff. I mean, I went with a group of friends recently to do this like guided journey, like a psilocybin journey, and Topanga Canyon of
Oh,
near Los
okay.
Angeles, and it's beautiful. And it's like this guy, grows everything himself, and it's like this guided shamanistic, beautiful thing. And it was amazing. And I had like no impact, and I kept being told the whole time that you're not allowed to experience it, and everyone else. And then I told the shaman guy, I'm like, I'm being told by whatever, something, a voice that I'm not allowed to experience this. And he's like, well, have been given like a hero's dose. You can't control it. I'm like, well, I'm not controlling it. I would very much like to experience something, and I'm being told I'm not allowed to. And he's like, this is weird. This has never happened. And my friends who were with me, it was three couples that we all went, and they were like seeing past lives and telepathically communicating. Like they were having conversations back and forth without saying words and seeing all sorts of stuff. And I mean, it was like unbelievable what they had experienced. And I was like, nothing. I had nothing. And then like the next week, I had we're doing an episode on energy healing, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna find. I asked, like, whatever. This is one of the best energy healers I came across, and one of the things that I loved her is she was like, I loved about her. She said, remote viewing for me is, or remote healing is actually stronger. And when I go and try to remote heal someone, I can see them where they're sitting. I can see their house. I know what position they're in, and it's more effective. She's like, somehow I'm able to link with them quicker when it's remote. And I was like, so you can like remote view them when you're healing? And she said, yes, but only when I'm healing. I can't do it any other time. And then so we had a session, and I did everything she told me. She said, go in the yard. It's easier for me, blah, blah, blah. After like 35 minutes, because she's on Zoom, but it's all quiet, she comes in and she's like, I can't find you. It's like there's this bubble around you and I can't get in. And I was like, what? I'm like, well, try. I'll try to meditate, like allowing you to come in. And then finally, toward the end, she's like, okay, I think I connected with you, and these are all the problems. But she was telling me my partner's problems, not mine. So she like connected with someone in the house, but it wasn't me.
Wow.
And so now I'm like, what is going on? And so it's like, is this like, are the non-speakers putting a shield around me so I won't get distracted or get too like caught up in my own experience and just try to report others? Or is it just coincidental, or is it something else? But it's been weird.
Yeah.
It's been
I,
weird. But yeah.
I had a similar thing with people go do sky watches, and I never want to do
Hmm.
sky watches because
Hmm.
when I saw something in 75 twice in a row, it was so close. There was no doubt what I was looking at. And I said, man, if you saw what I saw, you'd go back to you'd go to the hotel and go back to bed. And there was one event happened there, and they said, what do you think of it? And I said, it's not too bad, but still nothing what I've seen. And then they got a telepathic message from the supposed people inside the craft, and they said, Grant doesn't need to see, he already knows. That's when you said it, it's the same sort of thing. Is like you have this idea of the, I don't know if you've gotten into this philosophical idea about the contract, where you have
Yeah.
your job to do and I have my job to
Yeah.
do. Does that fit into this world
Yeah.
of consciousness
Yeah.
where you sort of realize you're here to do something, and what am I
Yeah.
supposed to do and am I doing it?
Yeah. Totally. And I think it's interesting too because one of the non-speakers, he's actually our science advisor. And his name is Anthony, and he's very tapped in with like all the multidimensional stuff and the spiritual stuff in ways that are profound. And one time he told me, he said, your responsibility is divinely protected. So not me,
Yeah.
but and not the words or the message itself, like the responsibility. And so I've taken that and I think about that all the time. And I think maybe that's why I'm trying to just stay really laser focused, like not go hang out with, an invite for a celebrity to go hang out their house on Sunday to talk this. I'm just like none of it. And even like the dabbling and okay, let's try the energy healing, let's try the hero's journey, and it's like okay, none of it's working. But I think that's because like I just have to be like laser focused on the quote unquote responsibility right now. And at some point, I'm sure that will like chill out a bit. I think the first 5 years, 3 years are going to be pretty intense, and then hopefully I'll have plenty of time to but like, I mean, I have realized now that when messages come in at night, that it's telepathic. I used to just think, oh, I'm tapping in to like a flow or like to big magic. Like we have a season, an episode on that in season 2 about ideas having their own consciousness and will and trying to find a willing person to make it manifest. Ideas like
Wow.
you if you're working, they like you if you're fun, they're interviewing you, right? And
Yeah.
if you don't choose it, they'll go to somewhere else. So we have an awesome episode on that. It's
Oh,
like one of
wow.
my favorites. And I used to think it was big magic, the ideas coming in, and maybe some of them are for sure. But I think there's been times where I like, oh wait, that's weird. That was so specific. And I saw this person's face. And then I'll write to the parent or something and say, can you ask XYZ if they were trying to communicate something? And then the parent will talk to their non-speaker and say, oh yeah, they came in your dream. They wanted you to shoot the hill in Iceland for the film and, you know, or something like that. So, and I was like, that's why I saw this person and we were in Iceland and this specific hill. And, you know, so that's one of the beautiful elements of this world. And I think anyone at the conference, the metaphysical conference, will understand this, that it's such a subtle vibration, psychic
Yeah.
input that sometimes you don't know. Is it an idea penetrating? Are you getting a download? Is it telepathy? Is it what? You know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
that's the nature of reality. That's what I tell
yeah,
people. They say, "What do you research?" And I say, "The nature of reality."
yeah,
It's
yeah.
so much bigger. You had it. You were famous for coming up with the idea of the hill. Do you deal with that in the documentary? And how do you sort of try to validate this hill thing? Is there any experiments that were done on this?
You know, we're not looking at experiments around the hill in the film just because there's not enough time. I mean, our
Yeah,
biggest issue right now is we have like seven beautiful, incredible families that we were filming and documenting. The science story, which we've already edited and is 50 minutes, and the film needs to be 90 minutes. So we've been like, how do we get all this in? And this person's journey, and that person's journey, and this
yeah.
person's journey, and the hill, and John Paul's passing. And it's so much. So right now we're trying to figure out what to take down, like what to
What goes
remove.
on the floor, the cutting room floor?
Yeah. Yeah. And the hill, like it's so fascinating, but I almost feel this like I don't know where it's coming from, but again, probably
Yeah,
some input from
intuitive.
others,
Yeah,
is to kind of protect it a little bit more now and not and just to not talk about it as much. I think it's really important, but I have heard from multiple non-speakers that it's overcrowded. There's a lot of people trying to come. There's there's a new space that they're talking about now. I think it's called the Yellow Room or the Cabin. And
wow.
so it's it's been infiltrated in a way, or at least, and I don't think it can fully be infiltrated, but and the hill will come up in the film. But what's been interesting, and I've been trying to figure out where do I put this information because I don't know if it fits in the film or the podcast. It might just have to be a separate talk track, which is kind of our companion season, that series that
Yeah,
keeps
yeah.
diving in. Um, is that after the telepathy tapes came out, a lot of the parents for the first time felt, oh, I can put my situation on Facebook. I can start a Facebook group. I can join that group, right? It was like the coming out of the closet around telepathy became easier.
Yeah.
So many of them started finding each other. And there's been a lot of cases now where this parent was like, my daughter was talking about this name and this name and this name, and it said their kid lived here or this person lived here and liked this and was this age. And then the parents, okay, I need to find someone named Micah who lives in Washington who is 12. And boom, they find him. And then all of a sudden, that parent of Micah is like, okay, do you know what are your best friends? And that kid says, oh, my best friend's name is, you know, Jennifer, and she lives in Oregon. So it's really cool because they're proving it amongst themselves. And I think for the parents, it's been really wild for them to realize that Hill is a reality.
Wow. Um, a couple more questions, then I'll let you go. When we were first talking, I had sent it to the CIA control officer who for the remote viewing program to say to him, all I said was, I think you should watch this. And then he replied, I think I told you this. He replied, I'm very interested and I'm watching closely. So with the UFO experiences, often they'll report that there's government interest. Have you had any sort of indication that there's other people watching what you're doing in terms of trying to pick up this stuff? Because as you know, all this kind of stuff can have military applications.
Yeah, I think so. And like I have to say that I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not going to think all that, but like, you know, I have a team now working and there's been certain people where we thought like a scientist or someone like
Yeah,
that we thought they're probably working for the government,
yeah.
you
Why
know,
wouldn't they study it? Yeah.
right. Yeah. Or trying to listen. Like there's been times actually for Dr. Powell and I where like we were we were on like our text message. You know, weird things would happen where all of a sudden like all the message would get deleted and then they'd come back again and we were like, what was that? That was weird. Like just weird stuff. And there have been like some strange presents that have arrived um at my house and we've thought okay, how do you check it for a bug? I mean, and that isn't even the world in which I like to live. I don't like to be
Yeah.
like conspiracy minded like that. And at first I thought no one's going to do that. And Dr. Powell was actually the person that told me like you have to be actually really careful because people who infiltrate aren't going to do it in some sinister way. They're going to pretend they're your friend and try to infiltrate your team and
Yeah.
try to, because a lot of things that non-speakers talk about, I haven't put out there. I'm not putting it out there because I don't think the world is ready for it. Um, and and I'm and who knows? So we are just very
Yeah.
protective and very close knit and trying to keep whoever comes into our team, into the science team, really vetted, very personally recommended by others.
Well, you certainly are on the edge of known reality in terms of
Yeah.
n new things. How do you control in terms of, like, I found this where you're working on nonverbal and then suddenly the blindfold comes along and you say, oh, that's pretty interesting. And then the energy healers, no, that's pretty interesting. How do you
Yeah.
stay focused in terms of not jumping from one thing to another? And are you looking at something down the road to deal with all these other things in terms of a documentary on? Because you seem to be picking up all the best leads on all sorts of different phenomena and very strange people who are able to do things.
Yeah, I mean, season two is really fun because it looks into so many new
Yeah.
things. And then the kind of the way that we're structuring everything, like season one of the Telepathy Tapes was 10 episodes, and then we kept it going with talk tracks where we're deeply exploring the stuff. So season two, different themes, right? And there will be some non-speakers, of course, but it's like energy healing, near-death experiences, reincarnation, like creativity, and seeing without eyes.
Yeah.
Um, and then we'll have talk tracks to really unpack those more near-death experiences, more, mediumship, psychic stuff, like with tons of stuff like that. And then the third season, we're already thinking about, okay, what will that be? And then what will be the talk track? So I think we can kind of like do deep, deep dives and then unpack, deep, deep dives and then unpack. And I think that's going to be kind of our progress going forward. Right now, I mean, as far as the film stuff goes, I'm so focused on just making the best telepathy tapes film possible about the non-speakers. After that, maybe something else will come up. Likely it will. But right now it's funny because my whole life has kind of rotated from filming to like podcast and making sure we set the foundation there first.
But that's what really moved the ball down
Yeah.
the field was
Yeah.
we didn't expect that to happen. But
No.
okay, so last question. I'm doing a book. I'm just finished it, and I just figured I'd just throw this out just in case you have a weird story. I'm doing creativity on music, where music comes from, near-death experience, people experiencing music, spirit world music, people hearing music before they die. Have you got any weird stories from your uh, kids and stuff like that where music got involved?
Gosh. Um, well, it's actually we have a whole kind of a theme about that in the film, which is lovely. So Kyle, who's in episode 8, and he was the young man, he never learned to spell. He comes to his mom in dreams and telepathically communicates with her there.
Mhm.
And this was like starting when he was 20. I mean, really late. I mean, the dream stuff started earlier, but around 20, he took his first music lesson and he could play and he could download almost any song. His mom has no idea how. He's got a repertoire, anything, and he's got perfect pitch.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
but when we were there with him in England, it was so cool because we went to a music, like therapy session, and he started singing and not in English. It was like, if I don't know if it's a different language or different a collection of sounds, and he really holds the space in this really meditative, beautiful way with a song like that. And then he had a concert and he did the same thing. And the music therapist and his mom were like, we don't know what he's saying. We don't know what language it's in. We it's like feels like a beautiful primal collection of sounds. Um, and he'll sing until he's done. And they're like, and we don't know what done is either, if he's just clearing the space and waiting to the space to be cleared or what. So I thought that was really fascinating. But then as far as sound goes, because it makes me wonder, is it music or sound? Like sound
Sound.
is a wave,
It's
it's a
all about everything's
frequency.
vibration. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like it's a vibration. But then we are interviewing someone. I don't know if it's going to end up in season two or a talk track afterward that cured himself from like a horrific disease from sound.
Wow.
So that's a whole new frontier. I mean, sounds are so powerful, right?
Beautiful.
And
Beautiful. Okay, I'll send you the manuscript and you can maybe see if there's anything that interests you in there.
yeah.
Kai Dickens, thank you for giving me the opportunity to interview you twice. This is quite the honor. It was the honor the first time. Just to end up, where's the season two starting? Where can they listen? And
Yeah.
where's the documentary for people that are going to follow up on this?
Yeah. So the season two will drop October 15th. And Grant, I know this is going to be used for the metaphysical tribe, but if you want to put it on your website, that's
Yeah.
fine, or
Yeah.
podcast, but maybe do it closer to October if you don't mind. So that
Oh
way,
yeah, yeah. No, no.
yeah.
They're going to use it first. I'm not going to use
Oh,
it.
yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
if you have it closer to October 15th,
Yeah.
that's awesome because that's when season two drops. And then the film, it will be premiering next, probably April or May, date to be determined.
Beautiful. Hopefully you get a Hollywood opening there with the red carpet and all that kind of stuff.
That'd be cool.
Okay, thanks for joining me again. You can go back to editing all your stuff now and planning your next your next show. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Grant. Take
Talk to
care.
you later. You bet.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.